Well, if the Bible is a document of God's will, it is the job of any reasonable and sane man to reject not only him, but this disjointed book. It is the joy of an even fewer number of men that they do so by picking the other team, at least symbolically. We can find New York journalist and author Benjamin de Cassiers, who in the very same year of 1904, writing in the Metropolitan, an essay on cynicism in the theater titled The Dramatic Devil's Advocate. In it, he opines on one of the most mortal sins. Envy is not moral, but it is right. The difference between moral and right is the difference between doing what you ought to do and doing what you want to do. Morality was invented in deference to the policeman. Right is might and springs from nature. Morality is polite. Right is brusque. Morality says, by your leave. Right says, up and at you. A mere difference in breeding. One is urban, the other is not even urbane. Well, envy is right. It gives us pleasure. It is stimulating. It promotes health and induces pleasant dreams. The beggar envies the king, and the king envies the beggar. The wise man envies the fool, and the fool envies the wise man. Envy is the basis of that divine discontent praised by the delegate who walks. Envy is ennui on strike. To pine for what your neighbor has got shows taste. If his wife is beautiful, it would show a total lack of aesthetic appreciation did we not pine for her. Envy is the sincerest form of flattery. De Cassiers came out swinging even harder in 24 years later in the literary journal The American Mercury with a piece entitled Hymn to Satan. The grandeur of America today is satanic, materialistic, irreligious, unethical. The settlement of America was the birth of a new reality. It began the dethronement of the mystical God and the rejuvenation of the prince of this world. Prince of this world, not in the old world theological sense, but as the spirit of the will to material power. As proof of this idea of America as a new satanic empire, he states, read the preamble. There is not an ounce of imagination, religion, metaphysics, or poetry in it. The Constitution came into this world like a prolonged cynicism in the mouth of an atheistic lawyer. The Constitution is the cold sun of reason. The publisher and editor of that magazine, H.L. Mencken, deserves to be mentioned as well. In his memoirs from his youth, he posited the following: I made up my mind at once that my true and natural allegiance was to the devil's party. And it has been my firm belief ever since that all persons who devote themselves to forcing virtue on their fellow men deserve nothing better than kicks in the pants. Eventually, our journey from the rabble-rousing blasphemer of the 17th century through the novelists and journalists of the 19th century and 20th centuries, entirely skipping the decadent poets, that was too easy. Bringing us to 1966, when a man took this idea of the earthly and rebellious Satan to another level. Anton Szandor LaVey shaved his head and founded a religion in the spirit of Twain's Satan, Tichenor's Satan, Mencken's Satan. He founded, of course, the Church of Satan, an anti-religious religion, an anti-church church. Instead of a revelatory text of divine inspiration, 2 years later he published a collection of writings that celebrated the ego, the flesh, the pursuit of knowledge. He promoted the occult in the true sense of the word, the things that are hidden from the common man. Now, and of course they are hidden by the platitudes of the politicians, the general ignorance of humanity, and the hypocritical piety of the Christians and social uplifters, and the shallow respectability sought by any means necessary by the bourgeoisie, those who, in Mencken's words, devote themselves to forcing virtue on their fellow man. It was bombastic, sarcastic, and it spoke of a hard-nosed philosophy of pragmatism and Epicurean delight, mingled with a carnival barker's knack for the dramatic. Now, he couldn't have expressed it any more clearly in his Satanic Bible. All religions of a spiritual nature are inventions of man. He has created an entire system of gods with nothing more than his carnal brain. LaVey's successor, Peter H. Gilmore, has been just as, if not more, explicit and outspoken in his own collections of essays titled The Satanic Scriptures, appropriate follow-up, a book I was proud to design and publish in 2007. 5 years after the media frenzy surrounding the founding of an organization dedicated to the, in name, to the Lord of this earth, another figure among the counterculture penned a guidebook for political activists. Saul Alinsky released Rules for Radicals. It was subtitled A Pragmatic Primer for Realistic Radicals. Following the dedication page are 3 quotes. The first by Super Jew Rabbi Hillel. The second from our godless founding father, Thomas Paine, advocate of reason. And the third was penned by the author himself. He says, lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical. From all our legends, mythology, and history, and who is to know where mythology leaves off and history begins, or which is which, the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer. Old Saul has seen quite a resurgence in popularity the last few years, being linked to the rise of our current president. And the religious right has been absolutely delighted to find this homage to the Dark One, so they can predictably use it to scare the pious Christians into believing Barack Obama is in league with the devil. You know, that is when he's not bowing to Mecca 5 times a day. But lest you think only poets, novelists, journalists, political activists, and the occasional cynical outsider tends to tip the hat to the Dark One's rule of this world, you may be familiar with the following quote. Ah, what a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horridly cruel works of nature. And this, at least from a big picture view, is an advocacy of a sort of real, genuine satanic worldview. In a nutshell, there is no God who loves you and looks out for your best interest. There is no heaven or hell waiting for you when you die. The earth does not love you, nor does it need your love. And at the end of the day, we are left with the greatest offense that one can give to the invisible monster baby. It is that we humans must love ourselves. And when we look outside of ourselves, it is into the eyes of fellow animals and not to the feet of wooden idols. Thank you.
At the very beginning, I forget which one of you mentioned it, but one of you mentioned the International Blasphemy Rights Day.
Yes.
And which, of course, until recently was International Blasphemy Day.
Yes.
Which itself caused kind of a spat within the CFI.
I had to make edits to my talk, actually, when they changed it.
And,
all right.
I was wondering what your thoughts were both on the spat that happened within the CFI and also on the day itself and what it means to you.
Well, I'm a very sensitive person, so No, I am a friend of the Center for Inquiry. I'm not actually aware there was some sort of spat recently with this blasphemy rights changeover. I was not part nor parcel to this exchange, so I'm not sure the motivations. I certainly wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the organization, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of infighting in the organizations where it's completely unnecessary. I myself, although I'm kind of across the board politically, I find myself at odds Simon can, back me up here. I find myself at odds with Simon quite frequently on political matters. I am. But I think it's up to us individuals to really accept the differences that we may have for kind of common cause. That is just a mere platitude, though, and we're all just stupid monkeys fighting one another at the end of the day. So I don't have anything more articulate to say than that about it.
Did you have anything?
Well, I think, from my understanding, it seemed like the push to add the rights angle, and it was to try to tone it down and make it less offensive. And it seems like that's. I think that's, and it was coming on the heels of the will the crazy Bible people burn the Quran, and so I think maybe some people were saying, well, you're exhorting people to commit blasphemy, and then so they had added rights to make it a rights angle, but so.
Can I
guess that's okay.
I was actually at the meeting where it was decided to change the name, and it was in June when I'm pretty sure that the burn the Quran thing was not even part of the consideration.
Really?
Correlation is not causation, folks.
So I guess, but my sense was it was to make it less
antagonistic,
less of an exhortation and more of a claiming of one's own individual rights, which seems okay, but I guess my only thought was that, if you're going to talk about something that's ridiculous, it's okay to use ridicule. And so, I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do that without being offensive to people who are willing to kill you over your audacity to use words they disagree with. And I don't think adding rights to it made that big of a difference. So I'm good with it either way. But I think committing blasphemy in terms of as a protest to insanity, it takes a bit of bravery.
I have a question about Tichenor. Do the works here, the ones that the books that are noted here as well as this one, are they political? And does he come across more as an anarchist or a socialist? How's he?
Pretty clear a socialist, because he never refers to organized religion as anything other than a tool of the master class, and so it's pretty consistent. And you got to kind of see it in the context of when he was writing. Even in this book, it was right at about the time of the U.S. entry into World War I. And so by the time you get to the end of the book, he's already making allusions to war madness driven by the profiteers of war profits. So his other books there, you can kind of see where they go. The last one was sort of the fourth one down there, Tales of Theology, Jehovah's Satan, and the Christian Creed, is kind of a wrap up of the previous three. And then his last book, which I haven't even had a chance to see yet, it's also pretty rare. Mythology is a materialist interpretation of class structure, class character of religion. You can kind of see that's, if there was a magnum opus or a summary or a theoretical piece, that's what he ended up with.
Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you very much.